So, what did you miss at Jubilee today? Well, you missed a fair number of people for a snow day. I got to tell you, I thought we might have fewer, but we were, if not robust, we were comfortable. They were good folk and warm folk, and we struggled with greeting each other with our hands in our pockets, but we are doing our best not to share the flu these days. So we did that. We did all the things you expect us to do. We were blessed by a wonderful choir. Choir was so good today, and the music was wonderful. During the lighting of the Christ candle, one of our members talked about his journey to health from a difficult diagnosis, through a year in which he's not gone back to the old normal, but has found a new normal, and he expressed his satisfaction in that, his joy in that. But more than that, recognized all the people that were part of his journey: the doctors, the nurses, the technicians, the TTC bus drivers, the strangers who accommodated him, the friends, the family. He recognized the light of Christ, God's presence in his whole journey, and it was wonderful. It was beautiful to hear. We listened to the prophet Isaiah speaking for God, and in which God says, interestingly, sort of talks in two voices: our voice and in God's voice, but talks about how we fast, how we sit in ashes, how we go through our rituals, somehow expecting God to preference us, give us what we want. And God says, do you think I really need this fast? Do you think this really is what makes a difference? That you can hang your head, that you can sit in ashes? And no, the fast that I want is the one that looses the bonds of oppression. The faith that I want, the fast that I want, the ritual that I want is the one that feeds people and brings the homeless into your home and covers the naked and recognizes family, does not hide from kin, is the way I think it's translated. And so we wondered a little bit what this means in a time when we are stuck in some hard places and wondering what is God calling us to do as we see what's happening in Wet'suwet'en, and what is God calling us to do when we want to stop pipelines, but at the same time there are fires burning from rail cars carrying oil, and that's not right. And we believe in indigenous rights with our mouths, but do we actually believe in them when push comes to shove? What is God asking of us? What is God asking of us in a world where we talk about climate change on one hand, and then others deny that it exists? What are we talking about when we watch the politics of our neighbors in the U.S. or in our family across the Atlantic in the UK? What is going on? How do we listen? How do we understand what God is asking of us? And by the way, what is the point of coming to church? If God doesn't like ritual, if God doesn't care, why are we here? So in the midst of that, we wondered what we mean by worship. What is worship really? And we came to understand that perhaps what we do on a Sunday, although we call it a worship service, isn't really a worship. It's a gathering that helps us prepare to worship. That is, opens our eyes, opens our hearts, opens our minds to the presence of God, makes us aware that God is with us always. And so when we are trying to figure out what to do, we need to consider God as a partner. We need to listen for God's voice. God who asks us, are you loosening the bonds of oppression? Are you breaking yokes? Are you feeding the hungry? Are you housing the homeless? Are you offering dignity to the naked? Are you actually considering strangers as you would brothers and sisters? We pondered that today, and it was a hard question. And at one point, I did say, and I stand behind it, if you're absolutely sure that you've figured it all out, you're not worshiping. You're not recognizing God, because God is always on the move, inviting us to continue to grow. In a weird way, to be faithful is to never be entirely sure, but to be humble and to recognize that those who disagree with us are also loved by God, and that God's voice can be heard in their words as well. And so we need to try even harder to listen. God brings us together, doesn't separate us. It's our actions that fracture humanity. So that's what we talked about today. I think that's what the prophet Isaiah was talking about, and I really hope that many of us are talking about it right now, even hours after church. So that's what happened at Jubilee today, all wrapped up in some wonderful prayers and beautiful music and just the joy of being together. And we missed you. But hopefully we'll get to see you soon. Until we do, consider what you're doing right now. Worship. Engaging with your faith, opening your heart to recognize God's presence. That's the real thing. If you can do that, then please come back and see us soon and tell us all about it, because we want to know. Until we see you, God bless.